It's still college football preseason, so still time to come out with some preseason picks. And preseason awards. AP All-America team announced today. Reigning Heisman winner Bryce Young on the first team, beating out C.J. Stroud. Will Anderson also there, along with defensive back Jordan Battle and Eli Ricks. So Bama with 4 players on the first team to lead all schools. Also, the 2 great running backs on the first team, Bijan Robinson from Texas, Travion Henderson from Ohio State. Buckeyes have a wide receiver there once again as well, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. On the defensive side, Will Anderson is going to be the guy who stands out, the likely number 1 overall pick, unless it's a quarterback, and quarterbacks can change everything, but Anderson Jr. would have been the first pick in the NFL draft this year had he been eligible. Look at the Tiger Hawk appearing twice. Jack Campbell and Riley Moss from the Iowa Hawkeyes, also first-team All-Americans on defense. Even Iowa State with Will McDonald getting in on the fray. It is the crossover event of the week. Late kicks, Josh Pate. Cover threes, Chip Patterson. Let's break it down, fellas. 4 Bama players on the first team. And Josh, I saw on the Late Kick podcast last night, you went out on a limb and picked Bama to win it all.
And good for me, by the way. Someone's got to give him some love. Not only did I say that, Hassel, I said, if healthy, no one's even going to stand in their way of them grabbing the belt. But I don't think it's a surprise they have first-rounders in the future. I don't think it's a surprise they have first-team All-Americans. The most fun to me is, and always will be with Bama, scanning the message boards, scanning Bama Twitter for the outrage as to how many players are not on the first team. That's a fun exercise. And then the other exercise is which names pop up on that team by mid-season that we didn't have on the radar at the beginning of the year. But all those names, obviously big time. We're going to talk about Dallas Turner a little bit later. I'm excited about him. That's a name we didn't see appear there quite yet. Best pass rush probably in the country this year. Really excited to see who, if anyone, emerges as a big-time receiver threat when we get to postseason All-American list time.
Yeah, let me go ahead and throw another one on there because I'm with you on Dallas Turner. But how about Jahmyr Gibbs? He could be a first-team All-American at running back. I think Jahmyr Gibbs might be the most important player for Alabama's offense, not named Bryce Young. He's an all-purpose weapon. They can utilize him catching passes out of the backfield. He's electric. He's shifty. And everything that we've heard from Nick Saban, and the thing that I really latch on to is everything we're hearing from Alabama's defensive players who are talking about how tough it is to bring this guy down in space. We haven't seen a running back like that in some time. And I think that the whole running back room is a position of strength right now for Alabama. But in terms of being able to execute this offense, when you've already got the dual threat abilities of Bryce Young, now all of a sudden your linebackers, your safeties, everybody on the back end of opposing defenses are going to have to worry about what Jahmyr Gibbs is doing and what Jahmyr Gibbs could do if given any amount of space. So, yeah, this is an Alabama-led All-American team, but I agree with Josh that there are names on Alabama's roster who are potentially as likely as any of these to end up as first-team All-Americans by the end of the year.
4 players on the first team to lead every school, and we're talking about players who didn't even make the first-team All-America team, according to the AP. But let's talk about the guy that we talked about at the end of last season, Bryce Young, hoisting the Heisman Trophy, or C.J. Stroud, the guy who's the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy going into this season. Chip, who would you have as your number 1 quarterback going in? Young got first team, beating out C.J. Stroud in the AP.
I agree with the AP All-American team here. I've got Young ahead of Stroud. Obviously, there's going to be moments that are going to be cemented in my brain with like the fact that he was the only one to be able to pick apart that legendary Georgia defense. And check the tape on that one. Chip was the only one on CBS Sports HQ picking Alabama in the SEC title game. And I think that Young continues to be someone that as he gets more and more comfortable within the context of this offense is going to become even more dangerous. C.J. Stroud has such a wealth of options, but I think about Bryce Young making plays with his legs, making plays on the go, the creativity that he's seen. It is just a little bit more of that versatility, a little bit more of that dual threat that I think gives him the edge over C.J. Stroud, who can just sit back there and sling it to a much deeper wide receiver room with lots of options. Young's got to get it done himself, and guess what? Last year we saw him do it against some of the best in the country, so I go Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, Chip, I'm going to roll with you there. And you talked about memory and what your mind goes back to. My mind goes back to what he didn't necessarily have around him at all times last year. I know these are first world problems and no one's interested in hearing about what Bama didn't have, but I know the guy won the Heisman Trophy. Sometimes I don't think we fully appreciate what he was able to do, the lift that was on his shoulders last year. First year as a starter for Bryce Young, they have, by Alabama standards, a very subpar offensive line, and that extended to the coach of that position, which they got out of there the second the title game was over. But also, if you think about the running game, Chip was talking a second ago about Jahmyr Gibbs and Jace McClellan behind him, what they could be this year. Well, there's a reason we're talking this year. Those guys were out last year. Gibbs wasn't there. They had a bunch of guys go down to where by the time they got to November, it was very uncharacteristic to say Alabama didn't have a ground game to speak of. It was all on Bryce Young. And the guy won the Heisman Trophy. If you're a size guy, you'd lean C.J. Stroud. If you're a hand size guy, you'd lean C.J. Stroud. Neither one of them run it a whole lot. But if we're going on productivity, I'd take the one that's left over and give you guys first choice. But if you're giving me first choice, it's got to be Bryce Young based on body of work to this date.
And if you're a biceps guy, you go with Josh Pate over Chip Patterson. But that's neither here nor
Chip's
there.
Chip's got a jacket on. Let's be real
That's
here.
true. We never see Chip in a T-shirt like Pate. Hey, there are other teams out there besides the Alabama Crimson Tide this season, and teams that can do some real damage, like Ohio State. They've got C.J. Stroud, who is the preseason Heisman favorite. They have Travion Henderson, great running back, first-team All-America. They picked 2 running backs for first-team All-America. He's joined by Bijan Robinson. Josh, which one, if you had to choose, would you go with?
I've been a Travion Henderson guy since high school, which is an interesting statement if you know about his high school career, because he didn't play for 2 consecutive years before he ended up starting at Ohio State midway through his freshman year. I think he's got the most upside. Now, if we're going on body of work, it's Bijan Robinson rightfully leading the way. What's interesting, if you're trying to find maybe some flaws in each of these guys' respective games, it's the same thing. And both of them have been very vocal over the spring and summer months about improving in pass protection. I reached out to an Ohio State coach a little while ago because I knew we were going to talk about this. I said, how would you grade Travion Henderson? Pass pro. Freshman year. He said probably C+. We like him at about a B- A+ this year because he was never asked to pass block in high school, period. Didn't play 2 years before coming to Ohio State. So in a lot of ways, it's been a pretty sharp learning curve for him. Travion Henderson at his best, I think, is better than any running back in the country. So he would lead the way for me.
Hey, give me that Bijan mustard right here. I'm telling you that this is going to be so fun to watch a Texas team and a Texas offense where all of the buzz is rightfully around, this superstar quarterback who comes in from the transfer portal and Quinn Ewers. But I wonder if as we start to look at the Longhorns and that offense gets out there, if really the player that Steve Sarkisian and Texas trusts the most when it comes time to win those close games that Texas is going to be in, when it comes time to not make mistakes against a quality opponent like Alabama, I wonder if the ball is going to be put in the hands of number 5. I mean, he has been so good for so long that even I found myself during my offseason analysis kind of taking for granted the production that Bijan's already put out there. And so while Quinn Ewers has been one of the big stories of the offseason, I'm going with Bijan Robinson, and a lot of that pick is forward-looking, where I think that this season, by the end of the year, it is Bijan Robinson, not Quinn Ewers, who really stands out as the Longhorns' offensive MVP.
All right, let's move to the wide receiver position as the AP All-America teams were announced for the preseason today. And another big story this offseason, Jordan Addison, after winning the Biletnikoff Award for the best receiver, transfers from Pitt to USC. How about Addison, or you take your pick of Ohio State top wideout Jackson Smith-Njigba? Pate?
I was very, very seesawish on this one, as I normally am in these kinds of segments. So initially I'm going Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I switched at the last minute. So here's my thinking here. Last year, Jordan Addison ends up winning the Biletnikoff. And I was part of the chorus of folks who thought maybe someone like Jamison Williams at Alabama should have won that thing. I thought that Addison just sat there at Pitt and accumulated a lot of numbers. But here's the thing. He's going to an offense, and he's going to go play for a guy in Lincoln Riley who is the best in the college football world at making sure that happens for you, and also the best at putting his guys in the right position. If you've got questions about USC this year, they don't start with, is Caleb Williams going to be able to throw the ball well? Is Jordan Addison, is that receiver core going to be able to catch the ball? Are they going to be productive through the air? So not only do you have a proven commodity here, but you've also got a guy who somehow won the Biletnikoff and is sort of quietly disrespected. in the market. And so as much as I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, as much as Patterson's probably about to run circles around this answer, I think I'm going to roll with Jordan Addison. And I wouldn't have said that as recently as an hour ago.
I'm with you. I say it confidently, though, because this is an old Barton Simmons. He loves when you've got the ability to play lots of positions, when you play lots of different sports. Well, playing high school football in Frederick, Maryland, Jordan Addison was the quarterback. He was the wide receiver. He was the defensive back. He was simply one of the best overall football players. And I remember Barton singled him out prior to his freshman year. He said, this guy has an incredible work ethic. He is an absolute dude, and he has the kind of skill to be able to have an instant impact. And what did he do? Immediately became one of the best talents, not just at Pitt, but really in the ACC at the wide receiver position. Jordan Addison has a body of work that is much larger than what we've seen from Jackson Smith and Jigba, who admittedly has done a lot with that small body of work. But I just think that what we are seeing from Addison is just the continuation and the growth of someone who has been just far and away the best at what he does for a long, long time. He wasn't the most high-profile recruit, but those who were around him during the recruiting process said this guy has the chance to be special. We have seen it, and he will continue to be able to put that on display at a bigger stage now, playing alongside Caleb Williams for Lincoln Riley at USC.
Chip, did you fade all the Ohio State players in this either-or segment?
Am I getting backed into being an Ohio State hater?
You are.
That might be happening. Oh, man. Let's buckle up.
Hey, I got one more for you guys on the defensive end, and I've got questions. So our producer Noah asked you guys for a defensive All-American that's going to wreak the most havoc this season. And Josh, neither one of you picked Will Anderson Jr. Did you even pick an All-American?
So, look, Hassel, you got half the story.
Okay.
Here's the other half of the story. I was peer pressured out of picking Will Anderson. I was almost told to not be a square, not be a simpleton. Maybe charlatanry was an adjective that was applied to me if I picked Will Anderson. So what I did is I walked about 5 or so yards over to the other side of that defensive line or defensive front, and I went Dallas Turner. I'll tell you what I got told last year. Georgia faces Michigan in the semifinal, right? And they face Aiden Hutchinson, and he's Heisman finalist, got all the accolades, ends up going high in the NFL draft. And I had someone with the University of Georgia talk about the task of facing Aiden Hutchinson. And they said, we faced 31 in Crimson. We faced Will Anderson in the SEC championship game. But the one that we also think may have been a little bit better than Hutchinson is 15, and that's Dallas Turner. And Dallas Turner didn't even start as a true freshman last year until the midpoint of the year when Drew Sanders went down, who has since transferred to Arkansas. Dallas Turner's like an alien. On any other team, he is the face of the entire organization, and yet he's a true sophomore this year. He's coming in. He's going to start for Alabama. He will be part of, I think, the best pass rush that you've seen under Nick Saban. And if it's not Will Anderson on any given play, it's probably number 15 there. So you want to go him, and you want to take Will Anderson off my plate, I'll be happy to replace him with Dallas Turner.
Yeah, Chris, he was removed from the options. My response was, is there an answer other than Will Anderson? Because there's not. Of course it's Will Anderson, but being forced to choose another one, I'm going to go with Bryan Bresee. And I think about the question, wreaking havoc, because 6'5", 305 pounds, big, long, strong arms. It is from the interior of the defensive line that Bryan Bresee absolutely explodes whatever any opposing offense wants to do. We see that clip against Wake Forest. Wake can't even run their long mesh points because all of a sudden Bryan Bresee is in their kitchen, scooping his paw in, trying to punch that ball out. It is just that ability to wreak havoc, that disruptability that Bryan Bresee has. The physical strength have obviously been there. He's a former top overall prospect, huge big-time recruit. But even in limited time, as he has dealt with injury issues, he's still putting together the kind of stuff on tape that gets him a third-team All-ACC nod after playing just 4 games, because you just look at what he does on the field and you just know that there are not many better at the interior defensive line at being able to disrupt what an opponent wants to do. So I'm going with Bryan Bresee from Clemson.
All right, defensive All-Americans to wreak the most havoc, not named Will Anderson Jr. I didn't get the whole story from producer Noah. That's why we have you guys on. It is a little bit of a heavy lift for me, though, when we have you on, because I have to promote both of your podcasts. Which one are we starting with, Noah? Is it Cover 3 or Late Kick? Cover 3 is the first one up. Sorry, Josh. That's Chip's podcast. Look at the QR code on the screen. You scan that puppy, it'll direct you right there to either Apple Podcasts or what have you. You can download and listen right meow. And then Josh's podcast, Late Kick, live 3 nights a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and Facebook. We are the podcast capital of the sports world.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.